Director-producer Vishavjit Singh is an illustrator, writer, performance artist, diversity speaker, and creator of SickTunes.com. He got his spark for cartooning in the post 9/11 tragedy when Americans with turbaned and bearded countenance became targets of hate crimes. For the past few years, he has been traveling across the U.S. with his Sikh Captain America persona, a Sikh man equipped with his turban and beard, fighting against bigotry, intolerance, and perceptions of what an American should look like. The short film American Sikh will receive its world premiere at the Oscar-qualifying Tribeca Film Festival, and the film was created in partnership with Singh as the producer and Los Angeles-based director Ryan Westra. Now, director Ryan Westra has been fortunate to capture many very powerful and important stories. He's traveled rural Punjab, capturing undocumented stories of a Sikh genocide, documented the struggle of native peoples against oil companies in Montana, and he followed the HIV/AIDS outreach work of an NGO in Mozambique, edited an HBO feature documentary on reproductive rights, and that's just to name a few. And he's had minor roles on Netflix and HBO series that deal with wrongful conviction and bringing cult leaders to justice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome film directors of American Sikh, Vishavjit Singh and Ryan Westra, to the show. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, I am very excited to talk to you about this incredible film. And I want to start off with you, Vishavjit, because when did the idea for the film actually come to you?
I think it came more from Ryan actually for this film. This is our second collaboration. And the idea came in the year 2019. Ryan approached me. We had done a previous project where we focused on my performance artwork. And Ryan got to know my life story. He visited my home in New York City. And he's like, I want to tell your life story. And so I think that was the genesis of our partnership for this film.
Well, Ryan, what drew you to actually direct this project and really bring it to life?
Yeah, so I got to work with Vishavjit on that first film in 2014. He dressed up as Captain America. We hit the streets of New York. He interviewed people and in the streets of New York, asking them, what comes to mind when you see me? What religion do you think I practice? Where do you think I'm from? And then when he changed out of his outfit, as soon as he went back into normal clothes after a full day of shooting beautiful interviews with happy faces, immediately from across the street, someone calls him Osama. And from that moment, I felt like I wanted to work with Vishwajit more because I feel the work he does as Captain America is a fun, interesting, and compelling way to fight the lack of representation Sikhs have had in the US. He's literally taking the stereotype that's portrayed in the media of people with turbans and beards being seen as a villain and flipping it on its head, turning it into the superhero. And he's flipping the stereotype that people with turbans and beards aren't from the US, flipping that on its head too. When Vishwajit is dressed up as Sikh Captain America, he's undeniably American. So we did that first film together. We had a lot of fun making it together. But then I hit him up a few years later saying, hey, why don't we make something a little bit more in depth? It goes into your full life story. So American Sikh is 10 minutes and it covers 40 years of Vishwajit's life and the origin story of Sikh Captain America.
You know, I have been blessed with the opportunity to talk to people from all different religions and cultures and places from around the world. And when I get to know them, my whole idea and narrative and countenance changes because I'm seeing people who they really are and not how the media portrays them. And so for me, I'm enlightened. And just the other day, I was on Twitter one evening and I was kind of thumbing through the feed. And all of a sudden, somebody says, well, look at this, two Muslims guarding the door of this New York City skyscraper. And so I looked at the photo and I went, those aren't Muslims. Those are two Sikh gentlemen. And so I tweeted back and I said, those are Sikh. And then I put period SMH, meaning shaking my head like, You just judge by what you see. Well, the moment I posted that, within a few hours, I had of these likes hitting this tweet and people agreeing with me like, don't judge somebody in the photo. You don't know who they really are. I knew they were a peaceful people. And, even here in the city of Houston, we had a police officer, and he was a Sikh, and he was unfortunately killed in the line of duty, and the whole town rallied around him, and I thought that was the greatest thing that I have seen, because even his fellow officers knew who he was, knew what his background was, and knew that he was the utmost man of peace. And so for you, Vishavjit, could you explain to all of my viewers, kind of give us a complete overlook of what it means to be part of this religion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a young religion, 500 years old, comes from the Indian subcontinent, and we've had a very sort of short history full of just a lot of persecution from different powers to be in their own time. But fundamentally, this faith is really about equality, and so the founder, Guru Nanak, um, was this is we're talking about 15th 16th century. He comes and he's talking about how do we treat each other with respect and equally. And so he traveled far and wide, I mean, on foot. He went all over the Middle East to Indian subcontinent, up and down. And his whole point was, we have this creator energy exists in every human being, and how do we see that? Now, it's easier said than done. I'll say this about myself and many Sikhs as well. It's a beautiful philosophy, but to follow it is not easy, because we are just we're tribal creatures as humans, and we love to see differences. We love to celebrate them as well, but I think we tend to sort of form in and out groups very quickly, and Sikhs sometimes do that as well. But we have this golden rule that, despite our differences, we're on the same journey. And that's kind of the golden rule. And I grew up not in a very religious family, by the way. My family had long hair, and they followed certain precepts in this religion and faith. And one of them is we keep long hair, and keep their beards and long hair. I have my bun on top of my head. Um, but I think the key challenge that humanity has is, how do we look past what our eyes see? Because we look through our eyes, which is beautiful. The universe is a beautiful place, but we tend to put people in buckets. And I do want to mention something you said about the tweet that you corrected people, which is the right thing to do. But I think it's important to also recognize that there's a lot of majority of Muslims, overwhelming majority of Muslims are peace loving Muslims as well. And I think we have to be, because I get that a lot. I'm like, Vishwajit, I'm sorry that you are mistaken for Muslim. I'm like, well, it's unfortunate, but let's also be mindful that let's not stereotype the entire 1 billion plus Muslims on this planet. So it takes a lot of self reflection on our part to make sure we are being good fellow citizens.
Well, just recently I was able to interview an Afghan filmmaker, and I just really just fell in love with the gentleman because he was so peaceful, and it was completely opposite of what the media's narrative is. Now, for you, you're American born, and you had your family went back to the homeland, and then when you turned 18, you came back to America, but you found it was difficult to fit in. What happened?
Yeah, I came back. I always knew I was going to come back, go to college in the US, and I come back first to the city of LA. And just like we were talking about earlier, people looked at me, did not know me, did not bother to ask me who I am, and judged me and called me all kinds of names, offensive names, laughed on my face. And I was a shy, introverted 18-year-old who is coming back to the US, not having any family around me. So it was a very difficult time. I went into sort of what I call my identity crisis for the next few years, trying to figure out, okay, how do I fit in? Who am I? Am I American? Am I not American? And it took a while for me to sort of find my place here at home in the US, through books. Actually, interestingly, I read just stories from the past, present, future, fiction, nonfiction, and just found a a lot of connections to characters who exist, who do not exist. But it was a very challenging time. I actually took off my turban, cut off my hair, tried to fit in, and realized eventually that I you cannot respond to people's fears and anxieties and ignorance by changing yourself. You want to change because you feel, hey, I want to become better. I want to be a better human being, and that usually is not driven by somebody else's anxiety and fear being projected upon you.
Exactly. And Ryan, when I watched the short film, and I believe it's around 9, 10 minutes long, and but it tells a very complete story. And how are you able, as a director, to incorporate the very essence of the bigotry, the racism that he endured, uh, to really get that message across that we need to stop judging the book by its cover?
Yeah, you make a good point. It's like I said before, it's 40 years in 10 minutes. A lot happens in the film because Vishwajit has gone through a lot in his life. At the beginning of the film, he faces intolerance in India, where his parents are from. There's a Sikh genocide that happens in 1984, and then he comes to the U.S. hoping to find the peace that he couldn't find in India, only to find that he doesn't fit in there either. So as Vishwajit mentions, he goes on an identity crisis, is having trouble fitting in until he finally realizes it's better to stand out as himself than stand out or than fit in as someone that he isn't. So he finally grows his hair back out, puts his turban back on, moves to New York, and that happens right before 9/11. So the intolerance he faced when he first arrived in the US, if that was at a 2 or a 3, it got turned up to 11. Um, and he was just horrified to see what was happening on the news, Sikhs being killed, attacked all over the US. And it's something that just kept continuing over the years.
Was it, and this is a question for both of you because, we all remember exactly for modern day, 9/11 was kind of like JFK was for our elders and our seniors in our country. They know what they were doing that day. But we all know what we were doing on 9/11. And Vishajit, when 9/11 happened, what was going through your mind when you were seeing all of these events unfold?
As you said, I remember exactly where I was. I went to work, and typically the first thing I used to do at work is I'd quickly check the news, saw this headline, very short story, a plane flies into World Trade Center tower, and it just sounded like a very bizarre story. I mean, that's just not something that's supposed to happen. And of course, in minutes, we were in a cafeteria, television screens are on, and we are seeing the towers come down. I actually had, obviously, so we're all feeling vulnerable, anxious. All of these sort of feelings are rushing through Americans and even people abroad. And then I had somebody at work who did not know me. We did not work together. I worked in a very big company, but he was giving me bloodshot eyes, anger-filled looks, like just and he doesn't know me, right? But he looked at my turban and beard and presumed I must be one of them. I must be the outsider, the enemy. And so I actually, me and my brother used to work at the same company. We asked our boss, can we, and this was we were working in the technology sector. We had the privilege of asking our boss, can we work from home? And he allowed us to work from home. So I worked from home for 2 weeks. And when I did step out, coming back to work, it was almost near unanimous, people flipping us off, calling me names, go back home, Osama bin Laden, Taliban, terrorist. It was a very intense, uncomfortable moment for me. And Ryan mentioned I've survived a genocidal massacre in India. This kind of a similar scale, different flavor, but the intensity of being seen as an outsider and a target of hate and bias was so intense. Um, it Yeah, it was a very challenging time, and it had a huge impact on not only on Sikhs, many other communities for months and years to come. Just as an example, I'll share this with you. I live in New York City, the biggest school district in the United States, the most diverse school district. Sikh children in schools report getting bullied at twice the national average. We're talking about almost two-thirds kids in New York City. They're harassed by their fellow students who do not know who they are, but at the same time, well, sometimes they know who they are, but it's the societal stereotypes, cultural stereotypes that are so powerful that even kids who I love to work with, I do a lot of work with kids, they'll take out their frustrations and ignorance on fellow Sikh students.
But when you put on Captain America, their whole countenance and attitude changes instantly, doesn't it?
It does, and it's this was a very sort of an accidental occurrence. I did not plan on uh, one becoming a cartoonist after 9/11. That was kind of like my way of processing what was happening, and then eventually I created a cartoon in response to the first Marvel movie in 2011. I created a Captain America and a turban and beard, and somebody asked me to dress up as Captain America, and I said no. And it took that photographer a year almost to convince me to don that uniform as a social experiment. Let's have you don, walk the streets of New York. And when I did, and I was nervous. I was actually fearful, not knowing how people were going to respond to me, because I know what happens when I walk out. I used to walk out. There were always a few people, who would tell me to go back home or call me all kinds of names. But when I wore this uniform, actually almost 10 years to the day, in 2013 June, it was like I had entered a parallel universe. I was followed by hundreds of people, photographed by people with or without my permission. I got hugged by strangers. That does not happen to me in outside of uniform. I got photographed by police officers. I got pulled into a wedding. I got access to a fire department truck that was managing a parade. It was a very bizarre, amazing, incredible day that I will never forget.
And, and Ryan, the way that you directed this short film, and you bring up these elements, especially when you show in the film 9/11 happens, and he's sitting in his cubicle, and his coworker jeers at him and looks at him. And when I looked up at the screen, and there's Osama bin Laden wearing his head covering, and I'm like, wow, instantly everybody judged everyone across the United States that wore a head covering and goes, you're evil. But then you put on a Captain America uniform and the same people are hugging you, cheering you on, wanting a picture with you. We got a problem here. We're all Jekyll and Hyde, and that's a sad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've it's yes, that is true. I've had a few people have said to me, "Look, I'm sorry that you have to do this, that you have to don this uniform to make this point. Um, we can certainly do better." I see it this way, and I don't know if we're ever going to live in a perfect world where everybody's just going to treat each other with that utmost respect. It's a good goal to strive towards. I do. I think it's the power of stories that really I get out of this. That we can, you can use stories to do bad things, and with humanity has many examples of that. But you can also take stories and sort of do good things with it to change people's perceptions about, hey, you know what, we have a lot in common. So I use my Captain America persona and a lot of the work that I do in schools and other parts of the US to highlight the fact that beyond what meets the eye, we have a lot in common. Once you get to know each other's stories, you find there's so much we have in common. And I think that's why I feel storytelling is critical, whatever be the medium, filmmaking, books, writing, poems, songs. Yeah, we need to make sure we create a space that we can share stories, especially of those communities like myself, Sikhs, and many others whose stories are just not represented in predominant American cultural media landscape or an entertainment landscape.
Exactly. And Ryan, you did a documentary on the Sikh genocide. How much did that project play into helping to create and magnify his story through the American Sikh?
Yeah, I think the Sikh genocide is something that's very important to Sikhs. In 1984, the Indian government still has yet to recognize that it has happened, and it's a really horrific thing that happened. Um, And it was important to include it in the film because just as, love is universal, hate is universal too. And regardless of where you are in the world, representation and positive representation is way more important than people realize. And that's what's really special about Vishwajit's work and Sikh Captain America is for many Americans, they don't know who Sikhs are. And when they think of a turban and a beard, they think of something negative they've seen in the news or even something negative they've seen in film and TV. Um, and when they see Vishwajit dressed up as a superhero, for many Americans, it's the first time they've ever seen someone in a turban and a beard portrayed in a positive light. And or even as a superhero. So it really kind of blows people's minds when they get to see Vishvajit. So it's the perfect story to kind of educate people about who Sikhs are, what Sikhism is, in a way that's fun and compelling and colorful. And I'm excited for more people to see the film soon.
Well, I think Marvel needs to shake a few things up, and I would love to see Sikh Captain America on the big screen with the rest of all of Marvel's characters. I think it would be absolutely incredible, and I think it would send, well, actually, your film is sending one of the most powerful messages of peace and to really open up our eyes to realize that we're all the same. And, we all come from different parts of the world, but we all have dreams. We all have purpose. We all have destinies before us. But I loved the film. And let me ask you this, Vijayjit, were you the one that created the look of the animation?
So I didn't create the look of the animation. I think this is where Ryan, I have to give him a lot of credit. I mean, we had a lot of conversations about this, that how much do we want this film to look like, has a little bit of a comic touch from the 50s and 60s, because the Captain America character that I had created in 2012, 2013, that kind of inspired this whole Captain America journey of mine, that was kind of created sort of in the early 1940s, 50s Captain America comics. But we also knew we didn't want to really have that complete comic look. So I'm gonna let Ryan talk about this, because these are early conversations we had. How much we want people
Yeah,
to think that a little bit from the 50s and 60s, but we want people to be situated today in the modern age.
yeah. So as you mentioned before, I've gotten to do some films in the past about Sikhs and Sikh issues, and because the issues are so heavy, I struggled to make a film that audiences would be excited to watch. So from the beginning, Vishwajit and I knew that we wanted to do an animated short film, thinking that with animation we might be able to talk about these issues in a way that's fun and colorful and interesting, that people would still be excited to watch. So for the first 2 years, it was just Vishwajit and I talking over the phone, planning the film, trying to figure out what the film would be. We went through 30 different edits of the film. The first cut was 30 minutes long, trying to cut down what's the story that's most compelling to tell Vishwajit's complete story. Then after 2 years of working, we brought on a storyboard artist, and not long after that, an animation studio in Australia. And between Vishwajit, myself, the storyboard artist, and the animation team in Australia, we worked together to figure out what the colors would be. And we ended up with something like Vishwajit says that's has a little bit of that comic book style, but not so much that it's distracting. And it has that organic feel to it. There's like a paper texturing that's on top. So when you're watching it, it feels like something of this world. And it still feels like, it's a documentary story, which it is.
And it is, and it's what I loved about the animation is that now let me ask you this on the technical side of things. Was the animation created by through computer, or was it done as I've talked to other animators, page by page being hand drawn?
So somewhere in the middle. So it was done all digitally, but by hand digitally, if that makes sense. So there's definitely a ridiculous amount of work that went into making this film, and luckily Vishwajit and I were able to raise enough money to hire quite a large team of animators to work over the course of 6 to 8 months to put all the animation together. So it's a big feat, and Vishwajit and I are super excited by the way it turned out.
Well, one of the things that impressed me about the artistic work of the animation and telling the story was the facial expressions of every character, and especially Vishavjit, because you see like the worry in his eyes, you see the happiness for happy moments, you see when people are calling him names. The facial expressions in animation is so important, and this film delivers 110% on the mark in this area, which of course we know that those facial expressions bring forth real emotion for the viewer to be drawn in, engaging with the story, and at the same time learning that we need to be stop being bigots and stop being racist against things and people that we have not taken time to learn and to listen about them, so we can, well, embrace, you know all, well, to embrace each other, to embrace all what the whole world is about. And this film, my god, I'm saying it right now, this is an award-winning animated film with probably one of the most powerful messages that we need to hear today.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think a lot of credit to one of our storyboard artists and then our animators who put in, as Ryan was saying, hundreds of hours of just making sure the story is done justice by the art that you get to see on the animation. So yeah, this has been an amazing teamwork, and as Ryan said, 30 cuts of the film, and we wanted to make sure every minute detail was addressed.
Well, it is. Now, for both of you, how does it feel to be selected to have a showing at the Tribeca Film Festival?
It's a dream come true for us, of course, because Tribeca is such a prestigious festival, and we've worked for so long to make this film. It's honestly a relief to get it into a festival as fabulous as Tribeca. And also, it's kind of interesting just given the historical context of the film and the festival. The festival Tribeca started not long after 9/11 to try to revitalize that district in New York. And similarly, our film was created in response, and Vishwajit's work was created in response to 9/11 as well. So there's an interesting kind of melding of histories coming together at Tribeca. So we're thrilled to be a part of it.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you both, what do both of you would want the audience to take away from this film?
Yeah, I'll let Ron respond as well, but I think, to me, I want them to see an American story here, an American story that they'll connect to different parts of it. They don't have to, we don't necessarily connect to every part of a story that we like, but, there's certain parts that you connect and you have sort of a little emotional tug. And I think that's what my hope is. And I think people will, they'll find that, hey, this is an amazing story, and there are different facets of that story that I connect to. So I think that's my hope and wish, is that people connect and say, this is a wonderful story, wonderful American story that happens to have a Sikh American as its main character.
Amen to that. What about you, Ryan?
There's a lot that we cover in the film. There's a lot to learn for people that have no idea what Sikhism is or who Sikhs are. I'd love for them to learn about that. But if nothing else, I just want them to see Vishwajit as Sikh Captain America and just have that image come to mind next time they see someone with a turban and beard, or anyone that looks a little bit different, instead of thinking about something negative they've seen in the news or in a movie.
I agree. Now, for both of you, what can we expect next from both of you?
Oh, we've been talking about that how more and more, because we get that question a lot. I think, we in short, we wanna create feature length films, animation films. We are open to also creating shows for streaming platforms. So yeah, we want to tell more amazing American stories that happen to have Sikh leads and Sikh characters, and even, I mean, other characters, who are underrepresented, misrepresented in American stories.
I like that a
Absolutely.
lot, and I wouldn't mind actually seeing a full feature or maybe an animated series where he's a true superhero saving the day. So hopefully that's on the horizon.
We
That's
hope
funny
so.
you
Yeah.
mentioned that. That's exactly what we had in mind actually, was to do a narrative superhero feature with a Sikh lead character for sure. Yep.
Well, you got a fan right here, and uh, ladies and gentlemen, American Sick is not a cartoon, but it's a powerful animated short film about bigotry, prejudice, and intolerance. And violence is not and never the answer. In this case, a superhero emerges because we all love superheroes because they're good. And we should all take a bit of time to realize there's a bit of superhero in all of us, and we can all help each other at the same time. American Sick can be seen at the Tribeca Film Festival June 10th, June 11th, and June 17th. Now, if you can't attend in person, you can go to tribecafilm.com and sign up and watch this amazing short film beginning June 19th through July 2nd. This is one film that needs to be shown in schools and colleges across the country as well as across the world. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program to share your great short film with us today.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so much for having us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching the Ward Bond Show, and catch the replay of our interview on our YouTube channel, Bond on Cinema. As for me, I'll see you next time.